Dr. Amanda Keene stared at the readings on her screen for the fifth time, her coffee growing cold beside her keyboard. The numbers didn't make sense, but they hadn't changed in the last hour. The radiation signature coming from deep space matched nothing in their database. "John, can you come look at this?" She called out to John Martinez, who was reviewing security protocols at his desk across the lab. The military liaison pushed back his chair and walked over, his boots clicking against the polished floor of Stanford Nuclear Research Center. "What's wrong?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder to look at the screen. "These readings from the Jupiter monitoring station. They're picking up some kind of radiation pattern I've never seen before." Amanda pointed to the wavelength display. "See how it pulses? It's too regular to be natural. But it doesn't match any known artificial sources either." John frowned. "Could it be a sensor malfunction?" "That's what I thought at first." Amanda pulled up another window. "But look, 3 other stations are picking up the same thing now. Whatever it is, it's getting stronger." The radiation signature had first appeared 2 days ago, barely noticeable above the background noise of space. Now it was impossible to ignore, a clear pattern that stood out from the usual cosmic radiation like a melody in a room full of white noise. Amanda's phone buzzed. It was Dr. Peter Walsh, the center's senior xenobiologist. "Turn on the news," was all he said. John grabbed the remote and switched on the wall-mounted screen. Every major network was showing the same image, a massive object decelerating as it approached Jupiter's orbit. Its surface gleamed with an otherworldly metallic sheen that no human spacecraft possessed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the news anchor was saying, her voice trembling slightly, "what you are seeing is confirmed by space agencies worldwide. We are witnessing humanity's first contact with an alien spacecraft." The lab fell silent. Amanda looked at her readings again, understanding finally dawning. The radiation signature. It must be from their propulsion system. Security alarms began blaring throughout the building. John's radio crackled to life with rapid-fire instructions. "Dr. Keene, we need to get to the emergency conference room," he said, already moving toward the door. "They're assembling a scientific response team." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Amanda found herself in a room with 24 other experts from various fields, all trying to make sense of the data pouring in from every observatory and monitoring station on Earth. The alien ship had come to a stop just beyond Mars' orbit. It was massive. Early estimates put it at roughly the size of a small city, and it was broadcasting. "The message is being transmitted on multiple frequencies," explained Dr. Eric Barnes, a communications expert. "It's clearly designed to be picked up by any civilization with basic radio technology. We're working on decoding it now." Amanda was focused on her own readings. Something about the ship's radiation emissions bothered her. The levels were incredibly high, far beyond what any human vessel would consider safe. Either their shielding technology was far more advanced than anything humanity had developed, or they don't need as much radiation shielding. She muttered to herself, the pieces clicking into place. Their biology must be different. "What was that?" Peter Walsh asked, looking up from his tablet. Amanda stood up, drawing the room's attention. "Look at these emission levels," she said, projecting her data onto the main screen. "Any human ship producing this much radiation would need massive shielding just to keep the crew alive. But they're letting it leak out like it's nothing." "Could their shielding technology just be that good?" someone asked. "Possible, but unlikely," Amanda replied. "Why waste energy containing radiation if you don't need to? I think they evolved on a world with much lower background radiation than Earth. To them, what we consider normal might be deadly." The room grew quiet as the implications sank in. Earth, with its radioactive elements and constant bombardment of solar radiation, might be as alien to them as their ship was to humanity. The first decoded parts of the alien message came through an hour later. They called themselves the Arxian Federation, a coalition of spacefaring species, and they were shocked to find intelligent life on Earth. "We have detected your transmissions for some time," the message read, but dismissed them as impossible. No sapient life could evolve in such harsh radiation conditions. We now stand corrected and wish to establish peaceful contact. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. As one of the few experts in both radiation physics and its biological effects, Amanda found herself at the center of Earth's first contact team. She worked closely with John and Peter to prepare briefings on human radiation tolerance and safety protocols. They're going to need special shielding just to land, she explained during one planning session. Their environmental requirements are completely different from ours. What we consider a normal day on Earth might kill them. The Arctians sent more detailed messages, establishing a protocol for face-to-face meetings. They would need to construct a specially shielded facility, and human representatives would need to undergo decontamination procedures before any direct contact. It's ironic, Peter said one evening as they reviewed the alien specifications. We spent centuries worried that alien life might be hostile or incomprehensible. Instead, they're afraid of us. The creatures who evolved on a world they considered too deadly to support life. Amanda nodded, thinking about the implications. We've always seen our planet's radiation as a problem to overcome. But what if it's actually an advantage? We developed alongside it, adapted to it. Maybe that makes us unique. The first meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks after initial contact. As Amanda helped oversee the construction of the shielded meeting facility, she couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited. Humanity had just discovered they weren't alone in the universe, but more importantly, they had learned something new about themselves. They weren't just another species reaching for the stars. They were the children of a world that other civilizations considered uninhabitable. They had not just survived in conditions that would kill most alien life forms. They had thrived. As she watched the sun set that evening, its radiation-filled emissions streaming through the atmosphere, Amanda smiled. Humanity had always looked to the stars and dreamed of proving themselves special. They just never expected their proof would come from something as basic as their ability to survive their own planet's radiation. The Arctians had come seeking intelligent life. Instead, they had found something far more interesting, a species that had conquered radiation itself. And this was just the beginning. John joined her at the window, his expression thoughtful. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked. Amanda looked at the radiation detector on her desk, its steady clicking, a sound she had worked with for so long. She barely noticed it anymore. To the aliens, that same sound represented death. To humans, it was just background noise. "Ready," she replied. "Let's show them what the children of Earth can do." Ambassador Susan Reynolds took a deep breath as she entered the specially constructed meeting chamber. The air felt different here, filtered and processed to meet the Arctians' safety requirements. Behind her, Dr. Richard Cole carried a tablet containing humanity's complete nuclear history, ready to share their story with their alien visitors. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, built in just 3 weeks. Its walls contained layers of radiation shielding that would have seemed excessive even in a nuclear power plant. To the Arctians, this level of protection was barely enough. "Remember," Dr. Cole whispered, "they've never seen anything like us before. We're as alien to them as they are to us." The first meeting with High Commander Zixtal of the Arctian Federation was something no one present would ever forget. The alien leader stepped through their airlock wearing what looked like a spacesuit, though it was clearly designed more for radiation protection than pressure containment. Zixtal was tall and elegant, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the carefully controlled lighting. 4 arms moved with graceful precision as the alien greeted them using a translator device. "We are still amazed." Zixtal's translated voice came through clearly. "Your world glows with death, yet you live. How is this possible?" Susan smiled diplomatically. "Perhaps we should start at the beginning," she suggested, nodding to Dr. Cole. "We've prepared a presentation on our history with radiation." Dr. Cole stepped forward and activated the main screen. "Humans first discovered radiation less than 200 years ago," he began, showing images from the early days of nuclear research. These are Marie and Pierre Curie, some of our first radiation scientists. They worked with radioactive materials with almost no protection, not understanding the risks. Zixtel's translator made a sound that might have been a gasp. They handled raw radioactive materials, without shielding. Yes, Dr. Cole continued. Many early researchers died from radiation exposure, but some survived, and through their work, we began to understand both the dangers and the possibilities of nuclear power. The presentation continued, showing humanity's journey from those first discoveries through the atomic age. The Arxian delegation watched with what seemed like horror as they saw images of nuclear power plants, medical radiation treatments, and even the early atomic weapons. Your species deliberately created devices that released radiation, one of Zixtel's advisors asked, their translator conveying their shock. Susan stepped in. We learned to harness its power, yes. It wasn't always a smooth journey, but it helped us advance our civilization. She gestured to the walls around them. The very shielding protecting you now was developed through our understanding of radiation. But your bodies, Zixtel said, leaning forward with interest. How do you survive the background radiation of your world? Our scientists say your planet's radiation levels should prevent complex life from developing. Dr. Cole pulled up new diagrams showing human DNA repair mechanisms. We evolved alongside radiation, he explained. Our cells have natural repair systems that fix radiation damage. It's not perfect, but it's remarkably effective. The presentation shifted to show Earth's natural background radiation sources. Cosmic rays, radioactive elements in the soil, even the potassium in bananas. To the Arxians, each new revelation seemed more incredible than the last. Your food contains radiation. Another advisor asked, their translator struggling to convey their mix of horror and fascination. Small amounts, yes. Dr. Cole confirmed. Everything on Earth contains some radiation. Our bodies evolved to handle it. In fact, some scientists believe that background radiation might have helped drive our evolution, creating the genetic variations that led to our species. Susan watched as the aliens conferred among themselves, their own language a series of musical tones that the translators didn't try to interpret. When they turned back, Zixtel's posture had changed. We have visited many worlds, the High Commander said, met many species. None live as you do. None could survive here without technology like this chamber. They gestured to the shielded room. Yet you walk under your sun, dig in your radioactive soil, and even use radiation for medicine. It is remarkable. The meeting continued for hours as the Arxians asked questions about every aspect of human life. They were particularly interested in nuclear power plants, amazed that humans could work safely around such high radiation levels. Show them the submarine crews, Susan suggested to Dr. Cole. He nodded and pulled up information about nuclear submarine crews who lived and worked near nuclear reactors for months at a time. The Arxians' reaction was a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Your people live beside a nuclear reactor, in a sealed vessel, under radioactive water. Each question from Zixtel's advisors seemed more incredulous than the last. With proper shielding and safety protocols, yes, Susan confirmed. We've been doing it for over a century. As the meeting drew to a close, Zixtel made an announcement that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. We came here expecting to find a dead world, the High Commander said. Instead, we found something unprecedented. A species that has not just survived radiation, but mastered it. The Arxian Federation would like to propose an exchange of knowledge. Susan leaned forward, interested. What kind of exchange? Your radiation resistance. It could be the key to exploring parts of the galaxy we've had to avoid. Stars we can't approach, planets we can't mine, space phenomena we can't study. In exchange for your help, we offer our own technologies and knowledge. After the Arxians had departed to their shielded quarters, Susan and Dr. Cole sat in the now quiet meeting room, processing everything that had happened. You know what this means, don't you? Dr. Cole asked, looking at his tablet where Earth's nuclear history was displayed. Everything we thought was a disadvantage. Our radioactive planet, our need to develop radiation shielding, even our biological adaptation to radiation. It's all actually an advantage. Susan nodded, thinking about the implications. We're not just joining the galactic community, she said. We're joining it as equals, with something unique to offer. She smiled. Who would have thought our planet's radiation would turn out to be our greatest gift to the stars? As they left the meeting chamber, they passed the radiation monitoring station. Its display showed readings that would have sent the Arctians running in terror, but to human eyes, they were perfectly normal. It was a powerful reminder of just how different they were from their new alien allies. Children of a radioactive cradle, Dr. Cole mused, looking at the monitor. That's what we are. And now it's time to show the galaxy what Earth's children can do. Captain Lisa Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Pioneer, watching the neutron star through the reinforced viewport. The massive star looked peaceful from this distance, but the ship's sensors told a different story. The radiation levels were off the charts, even by human standards. Engineering, how are our shields holding? She asked, pressing the intercom button on her chair. Chief Engineer Alan Brady's voice came through clearly. Holding steady, Captain. The new radiation hardening is working better than expected. Those Arxian alloys really did the trick. The Pioneer was humanity's first starship to use a mix of human and alien technology. While the Arxians couldn't handle high radiation environments themselves, their materials science was far ahead of Earth's. Combined with human radiation shielding techniques, it made the Pioneer the most radiation-resistant ship ever built. Dr. Catherine Wright floated onto the bridge, pushing off the wall with practiced ease. The ship's artificial gravity was turned down to save power for the shields. Captain, you need to see these readings, she said, handing over a tablet. The star's core is becoming unstable faster than we predicted. Lisa studied the numbers with a frown. When the Arctians had first detected the problem with the neutron star HD 7391, they thought they had years to find a solution. Now it looked like they had months at best. If this star goes, Catherine continued, the radiation burst will sterilize 3 inhabited systems. The Arctians can't evacuate everyone in time. The intercom crackled again, this time with an incoming transmission from the Arxian support vessel, holding position far behind them. Captain Morrison, our sensors show you've moved closer to the star. Your radiation exposure levels are beyond safe limits. Lisa couldn't help but smile. Even after 6 months of working together, the Arctians still hadn't fully grasped human radiation tolerance. We're well within our safety margins, command ship, just getting a closer look at our problem. She turned to Catherine. What are our options? The scientist pulled up more data on the main screen. The star's magnetic field is failing. That's what's causing the instability. If we could strengthen it somehow, could we use the ship's nuclear core? Alan's voice came through the intercom. He had been listening in. We could modify it to emit a focused magnetic pulse. It wouldn't be strong enough, Catherine said, but she was already typing calculations. Unless, Captain, what if we used multiple cores? Lisa caught on quickly. You want to bring in more ships? Yes. If we could position nuclear-powered ships in a specific pattern around the star, their combined magnetic pulses might be enough to stabilize the core temporarily, long enough to find a permanent solution. The next hour was spent running simulations. The Arxians watched in amazement as the humans casually discussed working at radiation levels that would kill most species instantly. You want to bring ships closer to the neutron star. The Arxian commander's translator couldn't quite convey their tone, but their body language showed clear distress. Even your remarkable biology has limits. That's why we'll rotate crews, Lisa explained. No one will stay in the high radiation zone longer than necessary. We've been managing radiation exposure since our first nuclear submarines. This is just on a bigger scale. Catherine pulled up a diagram showing ship positions, We'll need at least 5 ships, arranged in a pentagonal formation. Each one will need to modify their core to emit synchronized magnetic pulses. I can handle the core modifications, Alan said, but we'll need to boost power to the shields. The radiation levels that close to the star will be intense. Lisa looked at the simulation running on the main screen. The plan was risky, but it could work. And if they did nothing, millions would die when the star's radiation burst hit the nearby systems. Send the data to Earth Command, she ordered. Request 4 more ships with volunteer crews. And let's start modifying our core. We don't have much time. The next few days were a blur of activity. 4 more Earth ships arrived, each carrying crews who had volunteered despite knowing the risks. The Arxians provided technical support from a safe distance, their advanced sensors giving the humans vital data about the star's condition. Alan worked around the clock with the other ship's engineers, modifying their nuclear cores to emit the magnetic pulses they needed. Catherine coordinated with scientific teams on Earth and the Arxian fleet, refining their calculations. The radiation levels will be higher than anything humans have ever worked in, Catherine warned during the final briefing. Even with our natural resistance and the best shielding we have, we can only stay in position for 30 minutes at a time. Lisa looked at the faces of her crew and the commanders of the other ships on the video screens. Everyone knew the risks. Everyone was ready. Remember your training, she said. We've drilled for this. 30 minutes on station. Then we rotate out. Support ships will monitor our exposure levels. If anyone shows signs of radiation sickness, they pull back immediately. The operation began at 600 ship time. 5 Earth vessels, including the Pioneer, moved into position around the neutron star. The radiation alarms on every ship were screaming, but the crews stayed focused. Core modifications complete, Alan reported from engineering. Ready to initiate magnetic pulse on your command. Lisa took a deep breath. They were about to attempt something never done before, using human-made nuclear cores to stabilize a dying star. All ships, begin pulse sequence on my mark, she ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. The modified cores hummed to life, their magnetic pulses invisible but powerful. On the main screen, sensors showed the star's magnetic field responding. It's working, Catherine exclaimed. The field is strengthening. Core stability is improving. For 28 minutes, they held position. The radiation levels were incredible, even with their advanced shielding. The crews could feel the effects. But they held on. Rotation crews, move into position, Lisa ordered as their time limit approached. 5 more ships moved in to take their places, their crews fresh and ready. As the Pioneer pulled back to a safer distance, Lisa looked at her crew. They were tired, some were pale from radiation exposure, but all of them were smiling. They had done it. The star's core was stabilizing. The Arxian commander's voice came through, filled with what sounded like awe. We had deemed this star a lost cause. Your people not only approached it, but found a way to save it. Truly, you are the masters of radiation. Lisa watched as the next shift of ships maintained the magnetic field. It would take weeks of rotations to fully stabilize the star, but they had proven it could be done. Humanity had taken their greatest challenge, their radioactive heritage, and turned it into their greatest strength. We're not masters of radiation, she replied to the Arxian commander. We've just learned to live with it. And now we can use that knowledge to help others live too. The neutron star pulsed in the viewport, its deadly radiation contained by human ingenuity and determination. It was a powerful symbol of how far they had come, from prehistoric creatures surviving on a radioactive world to a spacefaring species capable of taming the stars themselves. Commander Christopher Hayes watched the radiation meters climb as the second week of Operation Stellar Shield began. The constant rotation of ships was working, but they needed a more permanent solution. The crews couldn't keep this up forever. Dr. Rodriguez, he called out to the radiation specialist who was studying data at his station. How's the containment field theory coming along? Dr. Benjamin Rodriguez looked up from his screens, dark circles under his eyes showing his lack of sleep. Almost there, Commander. If we can modify the magnetic pulse pattern, we might be able to create a self-sustaining field around the star. First Officer Laura Chen floated over to look at his calculations. The ship's gravity was still reduced to save power for the shields. Like a permanent fence around a dangerous animal, she said, nodding slowly. But can we generate enough power? That's the tricky part, Benjamin replied. We'd need to create a chain reaction using the star's own radiation. Kind of like how a nuclear reactor sustains itself, but on a much bigger scale. The intercom buzzed with a transmission from the Arxian observation fleet. Their ships had been watching from a safe distance, providing valuable data but unable to get closer due to the intense radiation. Commander Hayes, the alien voice came through clearly thanks to their improved translators. Our long-range sensors detect increasing instability in the star's outer layers. Your containment efforts may not be sufficient. Chris frowned at the news. They had stabilized the core, but the star's outer layers were still causing problems. Thank you for the update, Observer Fleet. Dr. Rodriguez, how soon can we test your containment field theory? Give me 2 hours to finish the calculations, Benjamin said, already typing faster. But we'll need all 10 ships working together to generate enough power. Laura pulled up the duty roster on her tablet. That's going to mean maximum radiation exposure for every crew. Even with our tolerance, it's risky. Chris nodded grimly. They all knew the dangers of radiation sickness, but they also knew what would happen if they failed. 3 star systems full of innocent people would die if that neutron star released its killing burst of radiation. Send the data to all ships, he ordered. I want everyone ready for a briefing in 3 hours. The next few hours were intense. Benjamin and his team finished their calculations while Laura coordinated with the other ship's crews. The Arxians provided detailed scans of the star's behavior, helping them refine their plan. During the briefing, Chris looked at the faces of the other ship commanders on his screen. Everyone looked tired, but determined. Dr. Rodriguez will explain the plan, he said, nodding to the scientist. Benjamin shared his screen, showing a complex diagram of the neutron star surrounded by their ships. We're going to create a permanent containment field, he explained. Each ship will modify their nuclear core to emit a specific frequency of magnetic waves. When combined, these waves will create a self-sustaining field that uses the star's own energy to power itself. Like a fence that powers itself using the electricity from the power plant it's protecting, Laura added, helping to simplify the concept. One of the other commanders spoke up. What are the radiation risks? High, Benjamin admitted. We'll all be exposed to levels well above normal safety limits. But if we succeed, we won't need to keep rotating ships here. The field will maintain itself. Chris took control of the briefing again. This is volunteer only, he said firmly. Anyone who wants to pull back can do so. No one will think less of you. Not a single commander disconnected from the call. The preparation took another day. Each ship had to make precise modifications to their nuclear cores, and the timing had to be perfect. The Arxians helped by providing exact measurements of the star's behavior patterns. I still cannot believe you're attempting this, the Arxian observer said during one transmission. The radiation levels where you'll be positioning your ships, they're beyond anything we've ever recorded. Chris smiled slightly. Sometimes the most dangerous path is the only path forward, he replied. Our ancestors learned that when they first started working with nuclear power. Finally, everything was ready. The 10 ships moved into their positions, forming a complex geometric pattern around the neutron star. The radiation alarms on every ship were blaring constantly now, but the crews had learned to tune them out. All ships report ready, Laura announced from her station. Benjamin was monitoring the core modifications. Power levels optimal. We can begin on your order, Commander. Chris took a deep breath. This was it. Their one chance to create a permanent solution. All ships, initiate containment sequence on my mark. 3, 2, 1, Mark. The modified nuclear cores hummed to life, each one emitting precisely calculated magnetic waves. The waves intersected in space, creating patterns of energy that were invisible to the eye, but clear on their sensors. "Field is forming," Benjamin reported, his voice tense with concentration. "Power levels holding steady. Beginning phase 2. The ships adjusted their positions slightly, tightening the pattern. Warning lights flashed across every console as radiation levels spiked even higher. "Medical reports radiation sickness symptoms in 30% of crew," Laura reported grimly. "We need to complete this soon." "Almost there," Benjamin muttered, his fingers flying over his controls. "The field is starting to self-sustain. 10 more minutes." Those were the longest 10 minutes of their lives. Chris watched as his crew fought through the effects of radiation exposure, staying focused on their tasks despite the danger. The Arxians watched in amazement as the humans endured radiation levels that would have killed their species instantly. "Field strength at 80% of target," Benjamin called out. 90%, 95%. Suddenly, the ship's sensors registered a massive shift in the star's energy patterns. The containment field had reached critical mass. It was now drawing power directly from the star itself, using that energy to maintain its own structure. "It's working," Benjamin shouted, exhaustion forgotten in his excitement. "The field is self-sustaining. Star containment at 99.99% efficiency." The crews of all 10 ships cheered despite their fatigue and radiation sickness. They had done it. The neutron star was now safely contained behind a permanent field of their own creation. "All ships, pull back to safe distance," Chris ordered. Medical teams standing by for immediate treatment. As they retreated to a safer distance, the Arxian observer fleet transmitted again. "We have confirmed your success," they said. "The star's radiation is now fully contained. You have saved 3 systems and countless lives. How can we ever repay this debt?" Chris looked at his crew, tired, sick, but triumphant. They had faced the deadliest radiation in the galaxy and won. Not because they were fearless or invincible, but because they understood radiation in a way no other species could. "No debt," he replied to the Arxians. "This is what neighbors do for each other. Though if you really want to help, our crews could use some of that advanced medical treatment you mentioned." The neutron star pulsed behind its new containment field, its deadly radiation now safely contained. It was more than just a scientific achievement. It was proof that humanity's unique relationship with radiation had made them essential members of the galactic community. As the medical teams began treating the radiation-exposed crews, Chris couldn't help but smile. Their ancestors had once huddled in caves, unknowingly absorbing the radiation that would shape their species. Now their descendants were out among the stars, using that same radiation to save lives. Professor Daniel Murphy walked through the halls of the New Earth Arxian Research Center, still amazed by how quickly it had been built. After the success of Operation Stellar Shield, the Arxian Federation had invested heavily in studying humanity's unique radiation resistance. "Professor, you need to see this," Dr. Sarah Blake called out from her lab. The genetic researcher had been working nonstop since they received DNA samples from 20 different alien species. Daniel entered the lab, noting the excitement in Sarah's voice. "What did you find?" Sarah pointed to her screen, which showed a complex comparison of DNA repair mechanisms. "Look at these patterns. Every other species in the galaxy evolved with minimal radiation exposure. Their DNA repair systems are basic, just enough to handle normal cosmic rays. But humans are different," Daniel asked, leaning in to look closer. "Very different," Sarah confirmed. "Our repair mechanisms are incredibly complex. They don't just fix damage. They actually become more efficient when exposed to low levels of radiation. It's like our cells learn to use radiation as a tool." Ambassador William Parker joined them, having arrived for their weekly briefing. He listened as Sarah explained her findings, his diplomatic experience helping him understand the implications. "So we're not just radiation resistant," he said slowly. We're radiation adaptive. Exactly. Sarah pulled up more data. Earth's background radiation hasn't just been a challenge we survived. It's been a key part of our evolution. The constant exposure to low-level radiation forced our cells to develop these repair mechanisms. Daniel moved to his own computer and brought up the archaeological data he'd been studying. That matches what we're finding in the historical record. Look at these radiation levels in ancient human dwelling sites. The screen showed measurements from caves and early settlements around the world. The levels were higher than what most alien species could tolerate, but well within human safety limits. Our ancestors lived with this radiation for millions of years, Daniel explained. Generation after generation, exposed to levels that would slowly kill most alien species. The ones who survived passed on their radiation resistance to their children. William watched the data scroll across the screen. And this is unique. No other species evolved this way. None that we found, Sarah confirmed. Most life-bearing planets in the galaxy have very low natural radiation. The few that have higher levels never developed complex life, except Earth. The implications were enormous. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring species. They were the only known species that had evolved alongside significant radiation exposure. This made them unique in the galaxy. The Arctians want to call an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council, William said. They think your findings could change everything we know about life in the galaxy. 2 days later, Daniel and Sarah found themselves presenting their research to representatives from 30 different alien species. The Galactic Council chamber had been specially shielded to protect the delegates from Earth's radiation levels. As you can see, Sarah explained, pointing to her genetic diagrams, human DNA repair mechanisms are fundamentally different from all other known species. We don't just resist radiation. We've adapted to use it. The alien delegates murmured among themselves. Their various translator devices created a strange chorus of overlapping voices. This explains much, one delegate said. We have long wondered how humans could work so casually with nuclear power or approach radiation sources that would kill our species. Another delegate spoke up, their translator conveying their excitement. Could this adaptation be shared? Could other species be given this ability? Sarah shook her head. It's not just a single gene or protein we could transfer. It's millions of years of evolutionary adaptation woven into every cell of our bodies. We can't give it to other species any more than we could give them our entire evolutionary history. Daniel stepped forward to show his archaeological findings. But we can share our knowledge and technology. Humanity has spent centuries learning to work with radiation, developing ways to shield against it and use it safely. We can teach other species how to do the same. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. Many delegates were already talking about the possibilities this opened up. There were regions of space, rich in resources and scientific opportunities, that had been off-limits due to radiation levels. With human help, these areas could now be explored and developed. There is another matter to consider, William said, rising to address the council. Our understanding of life itself may need to change. We've been looking for life only in places with low radiation. How many potential civilizations have we missed because we assumed life couldn't exist in radioactive environments? The implications hit the council like a shockwave. Their entire approach to searching for life in the galaxy had been based on their own limitations. They had been looking for life only in places where they could survive. We should begin new surveys, one delegate suggested. Search the high radiation worlds we previously ignored. Perhaps humans are not as unique as we think. Even if we are unique, Sarah added, understanding how we adapted to radiation could help us understand how life adapts to other extreme conditions. The possibilities for scientific discovery are endless. As the council meeting continued, Daniel found himself thinking about human history. Their ancestors had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't alone, but they were special in a way no one had expected. It's ironic, he said quietly to Sarah. We spent so long thinking our radioactive world was a barrier to joining galactic civilization. Instead, it was preparing us for our role in it. Sarah nodded, watching the alien delegates discuss the implications of their findings. We're not just joining the galactic community, she replied. We're changing how they see the universe itself. Back in her lab later that evening, Sarah looked at the genetic samples on her screen. Each one told a story of evolution on a different world, in different conditions, but only the human sample showed the complex adaptations that came from growing up on a radioactive world. Children of radiation, she murmured, thinking of how their ancestors had unknowingly passed down this gift through countless generations. We didn't just survive it, we made it part of who we are. The implications of their discovery were still unfolding. Humanity's unique adaptation to radiation wasn't just a scientific curiosity. It was a key that could unlock new frontiers in space exploration, medicine, and the search for life itself. The galaxy would never be the same, all because a group of primates had evolved on a world that other species considered too dangerous to support life. Admiral Michelle Foster stood at the observation window of Earth Station Alpha, watching ships from a dozen different alien species dock at the massive space station. 5 years had passed since humanity's radiation resistance had changed the galaxy's understanding of life itself. The latest survey team is ready to depart, Dr. Andrew Phillips said, joining her at the window. The interspecies medical researcher had been busy preparing the newest group of human-alien exploration teams. Which radiation zone are they investigating? Michelle asked, tracking the ship with her eyes as it smoothly entered one of the reinforced docking bays. The Carina Nebula, Andrew replied. Our sensors detected possible artificial structures in the high radiation areas. The Arctians never got close enough to check before. Director Elizabeth Turner walked into the observation room, her tablet displaying updates from various missions across the galaxy. As head of Earth's Space Exploration Initiative, she oversaw all joint human-alien operations. We've confirmed another colony world, Elizabeth announced, her voice excited. Third one this month, a whole civilization living on what we used to call a dead world because of its radiation levels. Michelle smiled. They had found several species that, like humans, had evolved in high radiation environments. None had developed space travel yet, but each discovery proved that life was more adaptable than anyone had imagined. How are they handling first contact? She asked. Better than we did, Elizabeth laughed. They're thrilled to learn they're not alone. Their scientists had assumed the same thing we did, that the radiation of their world meant they were isolated in the galaxy. Andrew pulled up his medical data on a nearby screen. Each new species we find helps us understand radiation adaptation better. The Carina civilization has some fascinating cellular repair mechanisms, completely different from ours, but just as effective. The station's alert system chimes softly, indicating an incoming priority transmission. The large screen on the wall lit up with the face of an Arctian commander. Admiral Foster, the alien said, their translator conveying urgency. We need immediate human assistance. One of our research stations near the galactic core has detected an imminent supernova. The station's radiation shielding is failing. Michelle was already moving. How many personnel? 42 researchers from 6 different species. None of them can survive the radiation levels long enough for a normal evacuation. Send me the coordinates, Michelle ordered. Dr. Phillips, I need a medical team ready for radiation exposure cases. Director Turner, I need clearance for emergency deployment. Within an hour, 3 Earth ships were racing toward the research station. Each vessel carried specialized radiation shelter pods designed by human engineers. The pods would protect the alien researchers during the evacuation. This is why we developed the rapid response teams, Elizabeth said, watching the mission unfold from the station's command center. 5 years ago, those researchers would have been doomed. The rescue operation was a perfect example of how humanity's unique abilities had found their place in the galaxy. The human crews could work in radiation levels that would kill other species instantly. They had turned their natural advantage into a way to save lives. Rescue fleet reports successful evacuation, the communications officer announced. All 42 researchers recovered. Minor radiation exposure, but nothing our medical teams can't handle. Andrew was already preparing treatment protocols. In the years since first contact, human and alien doctors had worked together to develop better ways to treat radiation exposure in different species. Remember when the Arxians thought our world was too dangerous to support life? He asked, smiling as he worked. Now we're teaching the galaxy how to survive in places they thought were impossible. Elizabeth nodded, thinking about how much had changed. Earth had become the center for radiation research and protection technology. Human experts were in high demand throughout the galaxy, teaching other species how to work safely with radiation. The latest starship designs are ready for review, Michelle said, pulling up the blueprints. The new vessels were a perfect blend of human and alien technology. These will be able to explore parts of the galaxy that have been off-limits until now. The ships combined human radiation shielding techniques with advanced alien propulsion systems. They could safely navigate through radiation fields that would have stopped any previous exploration attempts. The mining guilds are particularly interested, Elizabeth added. There are valuable resources in high radiation areas that they've never been able to reach before. A group of alien visitors passed by the observation window, following the human guide. Earth had become a popular destination for species wanting to learn about radiation adaptation. The sight of aliens walking casually on a world they once considered lethal was still remarkable. The new training center is almost ready, Andrew said. We'll be able to double the number of radiation safety courses we offer next year. The center would teach alien species everything humans had learned about working with radiation. From basic safety protocols to advanced shielding techniques, it was another way humanity was sharing their unique knowledge with the galaxy. Did you see the latest survey results? Elizabeth asked, showing them her tablet. 70% of previously unexplored space was avoided because of radiation levels. We're opening up whole new regions of the galaxy. Michelle studied the map showing their recent discoveries. Red dots mark the locations of newly found civilizations, all living on worlds that the galaxy had written off as too radioactive for life. We're not just exploring, she said thoughtfully. We're changing the galaxy's understanding of what's possible. Every discovery proves that life is more resilient than anyone thought. A small alert on her screen showed another rescue mission being requested, this time for a mining operation that had run into unexpected radiation problems. Without hesitation, Michelle began organizing the response. That's really what we've become, isn't it? Andrew observed. Not just explorers or scientists, but guardians. We protect others from the radiation we learn to live with. Elizabeth smiled as she watched the Earth ships depart on their rescue mission. Our ancestors would never have guessed that their struggle to survive on a radioactive world would lead to this. We're not just part of the galactic community. We're essential to its future. The observation room fell quiet as they watched the busy activity of the space station. Ships arrived and departed, carrying human experts to every corner of the galaxy. Training sessions taught alien species how to work safely with radiation. Research teams prepared to explore areas that had been considered too dangerous to approach. A new era had truly dawned, all because a species of primates had evolved on a world that other civilizations had dismissed as too hostile for life. Humanity had not just conquered radiation, they had turned it into a gift they could share with the galaxy. Beware the primates who conquered radiation. Michelle quoted the now famous Arxian warning. But not because we're dangerous. Because we can teach you how to conquer it too, Elizabeth finished. Earth's radiation had shaped humanity's evolution, given them unique abilities, and ultimately led them to their true role in the galaxy, not just as survivors, but as teachers, protectors, and pioneers of a new age of exploration.